Welcome back to the Employee Onboarding for Success program. We're going to go through now the master checklist and the what to remember part. So, whenever you're onboarding a new employee, it's important to have a list of what you're going to go through with them on their first day or prior to them starting week one, week two, week three, and a couple of months down the track. So, we're going to build this in Airtable just as a reminder. And so within this checklist, it's a dynamic checklist where you'll be able to see exactly what the new recruit is going to have to do and what you're going to have to do, as well as other members of the team. You can allocate tasks within this checklist as well. And we are going to build a visual representation of this today within the Airtable platform. Within what we're going to build, we're going to have our list items, categories, checkbox, notes, resources. These are all going to be accessed via the columns in each of this, basically a spreadsheet. Grouping for these categories. On the left side, you'll see the different grouping opportunities that you have. So if you wanted to see just the incomplete elements that need to be completed for that onboarding, we'll be showing you how to create the grouping structure for that. We'll show you how to duplicate this list and create a new checklist, which is basically the same thing, but then you just rename it for the new employee that's starting. So you can keep their onboarding separate from other people's onboarding. And then the final element that we're going to share today is how to share that particular task with the new recruit as well. So let's dive in. Okay, welcome back. We are on the example Airtable employee onboarding training base. Now, we've already gone through all the general page navigation. And what you have here is what the final base is going to be with each of the different checklists. You've got the different team members, and then you've got the onboarding resources, which are basically the links and useful information that you're going to be sending to each of the new recruits as well. So if we click on the master checklist tab, we are going to create this from scratch, and we'll just copy paste over some of the elements within here so that we don't have to sit here and type them all out, but we will describe each of the columns that we're building at the time. So if you click across here and click on the create new tab, we're going to have a new empty table. We're going to call this master checklist build. Click out. And then you've just got a fresh list ready to go. It gives you some defaults here with the title of the name of the actual column. Then you've got a long text notes section. You've got attachments, and then you've got a status, which is basically a selection option. So we're going to go back to our original master checklist, and you can drag and drop this just like in a spreadsheet. You can move it over. So now it sits next to it. You can rename it if you need to. You can just come up here into this little drop down. You can rename the table if you have to. You can duplicate it. So if we wanted to just duplicate the master checklist straight away, you could duplicate it here. And when you onboard a new employee, basically that's what you do. You duplicate the table and then rename it for the new hire. And then the first thing you do is allocate a new start date within their list. Okay, we're going to go across here. So the first thing that we're going to explain is this first title column. So a title column is a unique column that only has a certain amount of customizable fields within it that can be unique. So if you drop down and drop into here, all of these elements here, there are less available than these further columns because these elements have to be unique to this column. It's sort of like a referential idea that if you want to refer from another table, it always wants to refer from the furthest left column to allow you to reference other cells within that table. And so we'll just stay with there for now. So we'll call this checklist item. So we can rename here. And we're going to stick with single line text on this one. So this just allows you a single line of text, as it says. You can add a description for what exactly, if you have any predetermined requirements for someone to add a description in that, you can add a description here, but we're just going to stick with nothing. And I've just copied and pasted over from the master checklist. So I'll just grab all of those fields, the column, and I want to expand the table so that all my pasted cells will fit because I have more than what's available there. And we've just dragged them across. So each of these are unique, and if you find that you have a row that is exactly the same as the next row, it's just out by maybe like a week or 2 weeks, so say here, you can just add a different integer at the end of that just to denote a different one. You can sort, you can insert, you can do a lot of different things with these fields, but now that we have this is the start of our master checklist. The next column that we're going to fill in is the when. And so we've grouped each of these different categories by when they need to happen. So before the first day, on the first day, after week 1, and month 3. So this particular field here is a single select field. We've got different selectable fields, and we can add these options in and take them away, and we can also move them around, if you see here, by simple drag and drop. The order, something interesting is that you can have them colored as well, which is quite nice for the visual. But then as well, you can have them set up in a different order. So this order here will denote how, when you sort the column, how it will be represented. So if you have here first day, if you saw there, first day was after, we're going to sort from first to last. And because we moved first day above before your first day, that will show it above it. And let's just move it back and click save. And because the fields are the same, we're going to copy over those and drop them in. We will need to change the column settings here. So we're going to change it to, it was when question mark. And a single select. So a single select as well suggests that you can only have one option to select. So before your first day, on your first day, week 1, month 1, month 3. And see how those have been dropped in here. You can change the color if you need to. So if you want to change that to a nice pink, that can happen. And that's the single select for when that particular task needs to happen. We'll show you a bit later how you can group into these different categories. So the next column that we're going to look at is a checkbox. If you see here, you can do a nice little tick. So this is for whether the task has been completed or not, would be denoted by a tick in the checklist. So as nothing has been ticked off here, we're going to call it complete and use the checkbox function. You can change the style of these checkboxes. So you've got 4 options here: tick, star, heart, thumbs up, or a flag. Maybe we can do a yellow thumbs up. And you'll see here, as these are completed, we can have the thumbs up available. You can also group by completed or incompleted, and we will show that as well a little bit later. The next column setting that we're going to have is the person's actual start date. So that's just denoted by a date function. Change that here. That start date. We'll move off the single select and we'll go down to a date. And then you can change the format of the dates to suit what you need to see. And you can also include a time field as well. So if you include a time field, it gives you more formatting options. In this one, we're just going to have a friendly format date and have that available. So we can start here with just a random date. You double click on the cell And ideally, let's start this person on the 26th. And just like Excel, you can drag in this little tile on the side, you drag that down. If you need to change it, same thing again, we'll move it back one day and then we will drag that down to suit and you can fill that across. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit more tricky and we're going to create a formula column plus an integer column. So the end goal of this is basically if we have here before your first day, if you need to do something before your first day, the question is how long before your first day do you need to do it? So we're going to have a number column here and we're going to call it calculation. We're going to keep it as an integer just for full days. So we're going to call it calculation. So if you need someone to fill out the technology equipment preference form, how early do you need them to do it? So on this column, I'll explain it visually. So for our master checklist, this person needs to fill out their technology equipment preference form 7 days prior. So we're going to put a -7 in here, and then this next column after it is going to do a simple calculation to say, well, what is 7 days prior to the 26th of January? That's going to be the 19th of January, and it's this plus -7 brings us to 19th. Okay. So if we put in here -7, it at the moment, I think the format initially says that you're not allowed to put negative integers in there. So we're just going to jump back into the settings and allow negative numbers and save that. I'm just going to go back in here and say -7 days. And there you have it. So you've got 7 days allowed. We're just going to copy and paste these over again. Okay, there's that. And then we're going to create the calculation and the formula column next to it. So we're going to create a new column. Call it, say, a due date based off the start date. And the start date's going to be the same every time. Otherwise, what you would have to do is create a due date and just manually add in all of the different due dates for that. But because we're automating this and we don't want to have to do that every time, we want to have one fixed date and for the system to calculate all those different dates automatically from that. So we're going to scroll down here for a formula tab. Now the formula is quite interesting. Let's create that field already. Okay, so it requires us to drop in a formula. So what we're going to do is see if we can go across. No, we're going to go across and grab the formula and I'll explain it as we go. Okay. So the formula that we're using here, due date, I'll explain it as we go. So the date add function, which is just to allow you to add dates to each other based off a number. And then as you can see here within the parentheses, you've got the start date. So this column here, and we're going to add the column for the day's calendar. But the day's calendar here is going to be a little different. That's because we copied it across. If we have here, we're going to call it the calculation column. And then we're going to denote those in days anyway. Okay, so we're going to create that field and see what happens here. So if you've got a start date of the 25th of January, you just want to change the format of this as well. So local time, we'll do friendly time. We don't need any time reference in there. And there's another field here for using the same time zone, GMT, for all collaborators. So we'll just keep that on just to make sure that if there's any remote teams, that the date is consistent across that. So let's just double check whether we have, whether the calculation is correct. So we'll have there the 25th of January minus 7 days equals 18th of January. So that's great. 25th minus 0 days is the 25th. So let's just test it out by adding 1. And that should change instantly. If you see that there, the 26th of January. So that's great. So that's just a simple way of setting up a calculation. Any addition or change to this start date. So when you copy this master list across for a new employee, all you need to do now is just change the start date. And then all of the other dates will change to suit. And you have here 12th, 19 minus 7 equals 12. And so that's how we do the integer. And then we use that integer column in a formula to recalculate and have another column based off that initial start date. What we'll do just now is show you another function, is to hide this particular field. You don't really need to see the calculated number field, and you can just hide that here on the options. And that will just hide him just between there. And you'll see up here, you can uncheck or unhide any of the hidden fields that are already there, or you could turn other ones off as you see fit. Okay, so the next column that we're going to look at is a little bit simpler. It's just a simple notes column, which will just be a long text field. So we're going to go in here. No need to create anything new. We'll call it notes, but with long text. Now I understand that I think it's about 3,000 characters that you can have within that field. And I'll show you an example here. You can add new things. And I think 3,000 is definitely enough for that. And so we'll just go copy across all the details here for the notes. There you have it. So with those notes, if you expand the cell, you should see the full element there. And you can also, what I like, which I think is pretty cool, anyone in your team, if you need to refer them to any of those nodes, you just hit the @ symbol and their name, and they will get pinged with a message if you change anything or if you have anything specific. So say if you're working on a task together and you want to update them that you've changed this, you can just send them a mention and they will get the notification straight away. Just as a reiteration, because it's cloud-based, everything that you change is automatically saved within the table as well. So that's quite a nice feature for remembering anything there. What we're going to do now is just talk to the next tabs that we're going to build, and I'll explain these on the master checklist that we already have. I said at the start, when you want to refer to other tables that are within your base, you can do that once they are created. And so here what we have is a link to the resources tab. So what we've called it is a relevant resource. And so with each of these checklist items, you want to refer to a resource that's on a different page. So if we have here the onboarding resources, if you want to refer the new employee to a particular resource within the company, you can do that, but it doesn't make sense to have that particular resource located and saved within the checklist file. So that's why you create a new tab and create and allocate that new resource into that tab. And all of these rows are resources that you can refer to in the future. And so this column here, we're going to explain it in the next video, where it's a referential column that refers another table, and then you can allocate and create any of the links to those other elements. So here what we have is the file, and then we have a link to the file as well. And so you can save the link to a SharePoint file or to a Google Doc or anything that you need as a text file here, and that text will be turned into a link, and then the user can just click on that link. And so the real power there is anytime that the link is updated, as long as the address doesn't change, that link or the file will still be the updated file, and that it shouldn't change anything, and you don't have to change any of the links to that file in the future. Also as well, on the final two columns, we want to allocate a point of contact for the new employee. And if a person from the team has any requirements or they need to help or do anything, you can link them as the point of contact. And so this is just another referential column, and it's referring to the person and to their email address. And what's another powerful thing about that is that once you refer to an email address, if you have any automations that happen in the future, you can start to get it a lot smarter to say that if one if one row is completed, so if one task is completed and the next task requires that first task to be completed, it can send an email to the next person, sort of like in series, that that next person has to then, do something once that first task is completed. And so we can get a lot smarter there when we start to use the reference columns in a better way.